I just signed a $1.5 billion contract. 3 minutes later, I was no longer an employee at Athenix Group. The applause was still dying down in the conference hall when I felt the vibration in my pocket. A single notification. The subject line was sterile. Internal realignment. Tier 3 clearance change. The body of the message was even colder. Effective immediately, your access credentials have been retired in accordance with Executive Discretion Clause 14.6. I glanced over at Victor Hayes. He was still standing on stage, shaking hands, flashing that polished smile of his. It looked real enough on camera. But I'd worked next to him for nearly a decade. I knew exactly when that smile was a mask. He didn't even look at me as he passed me a glass of champagne before stepping off to greet a defense undersecretary. You won't guess what I did at the all-hands meeting. Even HR went silent. I set the glass down and walked. Past the stage, past the journalists, past the line of executives who still thought I was one of them. No one followed. No one asked. They all had their roles. Mine, apparently, had just been cut. In the elevator, I opened the company terminal app. My fingerprint didn't work. Neither did the two-factor authentication key I'd used for 12 years. A flashing red banner blinked across the screen. Access revoked. I exited on the sublevel where the sysadmin center was housed. I knew the route by memory, had designed it actually. The guy behind the desk didn't even meet my eyes, just pointed at a small manila envelope with my name on it. Inside was a generic NDA reminder, a USB token labeled Archive, and a note. We appreciate your service. It wasn't a firing, it was an erasure. I wasn't escorted out. No HR debrief, no press memo, no offboarding meeting. I wasn't on the roster anymore, digitally or physically. My badge didn't beep at the exit gate, just a soft buzz and a blink of red. That's when I understood the precision. This had been planned, down to the second. They waited until after I signed the contract. The moment I became non-essential, they hit delete. But they forgot one thing. I never left without a copy of the blueprint. On the train back to Austin, I didn't scroll social media. I didn't check the news. I powered on a private terminal in my bag, never linked to the corporate mesh, and decrypted a single folder labeled Sleep Protocol. They hadn't just removed me. They'd removed the only person who knew how the system worked when it failed. I don't return to the conference hall. I don't cause a scene. I just walk into the shadows and unlock the one system they thought I forgot. I didn't go back to the hall. I didn't break anything. I just walked away and opened the offline drive they never knew existed. I don't need to break anything. I just need everything to stop. And I'm the only one who knows how to restart it. I arrived back in Austin that evening to no alerts, no calls, no fallout. It was quiet. Too quiet for a man who just had a $1.5 billion deal erased from beneath his feet. But quiet wasn't absence. Quiet was setup. At my apartment, I disabled all wireless signals before unpacking the secure terminal. I hadn't used it in 2 years. Still ran on a local power source, no backdoors, no auto-sync, just code. Pure, clean, authenticated logic. Exactly what I needed. The sleep protocol wasn't sabotage, it was a contingency. Buried beneath the Athenix systems was a kernel-level safety layer, one designed to initiate a silent freeze of all active AI modules if unauthorized overrides occurred without biometric reauthentication. I wrote it myself, back when I still believed in fail-safe as more than a PR term. And now, that exact fail-safe was my first move. The logic was simple. If the root signature didn't match the original architecture seed, mine, then the AI backbone would halt, disconnect from cloud sync, and enter isolation mode. No explosions, no damage, just a silence too clean to ignore. I connected the fingerprint reader and slid in the hardened USB key labeled PHX-lock. The screen blinked twice, then a green pulse. Authenticator. Verified. The countdown began. 72 hours until auto-lock, unless a correct seed signature override was entered. They wouldn't know it was me. They wouldn't even know what was a peening, only that the system was slowing, rerouting, timing out. Juliet's email came in next. Found the original contract, she wrote. You're listed as co-origin architect. Victor's copy is altered. Sending scans. It was more than I expected, but exactly what I needed. Then came a message from Margot. Just 6 words. Media is asking. You vanished. Why? I didn't answer. Not yet. I uploaded the cryptographic hash of the original codebase to a public timestamping ledger under an anonymous key. Not for noise, but for proof. I also submitted a query to the AI consortium. Discrepancy in architectural lineage. Request integrity review. It wasn't enough to build something. You had to prove you built it when they tried to steal it. By midnight, I could see packet slowdowns on public nodes. Someone inside Athenix was already noticing. And the thing about clean failure is that it doesn't come with alarms. It just denies results. When the backbone system doesn't return inference decisions to 3-letter agencies in under 0.3 seconds, people start calling. Not the board. Not PR. They call the guy who made it run that fast. I don't need to win. I just need to show them who they call when it stops running. And it won't be Victor. I didn't break the system. I just put it to sleep, and I'm the only one who knows how to wake it up. They erased my name from the system, but they couldn't erase the logic I built it on. The cafe was exactly as I remembered it. Quiet. Tucked into a side street in South Austin. Invisible to anyone who didn't already know it was there. No cameras. Cash only. A perfect place for guilt to breathe. Samir arrived 12 minutes late. Nervous, hunched in his chair, eyes flicking toward the door like someone might be following him. He looked older. Or maybe it was the weight of what he'd agreed to 2 years ago finally catching up with him. He didn't speak at first. Just took the drive I slid across the table and stared at it. I thought you deleted this, I said, keeping my voice flat. I tried. His fingers tightened around the plastic, but I kept a shadow copy, buried it in cold storage. I didn't want to, but I knew one day this might happen. I nodded once. No blame, just business. 2 years ago, Samir had been on my team, the lead on back-end logging for the architecture that became Sentinel Core. When Victor began replacing signatures and reassigning authorship in the metadata, Samir had signed off on the modified build, probably under pressure, probably with a threat. It didn't matter now. What mattered was the log he had saved. We connected his drive to a clean terminal. No network, just us and the code. I initiated the comparison, metadata logs, fingerprinted commit chains, signature hashes. And there it was, my original codebase commit, time-stamped, complete with biometric ID, E. Granger, build seed, PHX Alpha 1.04. Samir leaned in. It's identical to the one running the current system. I already knew that. But now it was validated, independently, reproducibly, cryptographically. Juliet called as we were shutting the terminal down. Victor's contract copy has been scrubbed. They removed the co-origin clause, reassigned the legal authorship, and modified the creation log. But, she paused. The blockchain archive doesn't match the internal files. That's your in. That was the crack I'd been waiting for. Back at my apartment, I used the verification logs to generate a public audit bundle. I submitted it to the AI consortium and time-stamped the entire package with an anonymous public signature. Then I wrote the description line. Original architecture submission. Verified fingerprint. Pending legal review. It didn't say my name, but it would lead to me. Samir hesitated before leaving. What are you going to do with all this? I looked out the window, watching a city run on systems I helped build. Nothing, I said. Not yet. The data was no longer just evidence. It was leverage. And leverage works best when your opponent still thinks you're holding nothing. Now what? Samir asked. I answered without turning back. Now, I don't need to speak. I just need them to discover who lied to them. Now, I don't need to speak. I just need them to discover who lied to them. I know this sounds insane, but it actually worked. Keep watching to see how. They didn't even know it was me, not yet. All they knew was that the system was slowing, and no one could figure out why. The reports started flooding in by morning. First from the East Coast Defense Cluster, a 3-minute delay in real-time predictive modeling. Then from an automated border checkpoint in Nevada. The surveillance neural net failed to flag a red-listed vehicle until it had already crossed state lines. No alarms, no corruption, just decisions that never arrived. From the outside, it looked like lag, a patchable bug. But those inside Athenix, the ones who remembered how this architecture worked, knew better. Sentinel Core didn't lag. It either worked at full capacity or not at all. Delay meant that something had triggered the fallback logic deep inside the system's core. Sleep Protocol had entered Phase 2. The real beauty of it wasn't the technical lockout. It was the silence. The protocol didn't raise alerts. It didn't leave logs. It simply began decoupling components from the master inference engine, one layer at a time. By the time anyone noticed the full extent, the central control server would be operating on passive mode, and the only way to restart it would be through biometric confirmation from the original architect, me. Victor still hadn't said a word publicly, but I knew he was scrambling. I'd worked alongside him too long to miss the signs. His LinkedIn went offline. Athenix's website removed the Team Bios page. Journalists started probing the company's PR account about performance anomalies. No statements were returned. And then came the leak. A sound file, exactly 14 seconds long. I don't care whose name is on the code. I just need Granger to sign it so I can reassign the asset. No one checks provenance, only signatures. The voice was Victor's. The recording was from 2022. It appeared on an anonymous Reddit post under the title, AI Ethics in Government Contracts. The Mask Slips. Within an hour, it hit Hacker News, then Twitter, then every tech and defense blog in the sector. I didn't upload it. That was Margot. She hadn't warned me, hadn't asked for permission. But I knew it was her. She was the only one who still had access to our backup vault from the book we wrote together, the one we never published, the one where that recording had been meant as a cautionary tale about corporate pressure and compromised ethics. Now it was Exhibit A. The fallout was instant. Government agencies began pulling Athenix deliverables into review. The AI Consortium published a preliminary ethics breach advisory. A news anchor asked live on air, if Victor Hayes isn't the real architect behind Sentinel Core, then who is? Still, I didn't answer. My name didn't need to be spoken. It just needed to be missed enough times for people to start asking why. At 10:42 a.m., Victor's office issued a private email to internal Tier 1 staff. Urgent. If any of you have alternate access to architecture verification keys, report to executive immediately. System degradation identified. Root cause unknown. He didn't even have the decency to admit what was happening. He didn't understand that it wasn't about the key anymore. It was about trust. And trust, once broken, spreads like infection. By 2 p.m., the central logic router failed its ping back. The system didn't crash. It just stopped. Entire prediction trees went blank. The facial recognition layers began returning null indexes. Victor issued an internal memo calling for emergency recovery, but no one could access the override layer because the override wasn't on the system. It was in my pocket. Juliet called me with a clipped voice. Whatever you did, It's working. I didn't respond. Across every terminal at Athenix, a single prompt began appearing in soft gray text. System sleep active awaiting biometric confirmation. Original architect only. And right below it, authentication required, E. Granger, seed, PHX Alpha 104. They didn't even try to fake it anymore. They couldn't. They hadn't just fired me. They had deleted the only person who knew how to wake up what they built. They hadn't just fired me. They had deleted the only person who knew how to wake up what they built. I'm not saying you should do what I did, but if you're curious, don't skip. Victor had 24 hours to make a choice, confess or fall. He did neither. So I gave him a third option. One that would burn quietly, thoroughly, and without warning. The system freeze had reached national scale. 3 military contractors filed internal queries with the Department of Defense about model regression in real-time simulations. One procurement agency marked Athenix's deliverables under audit. The term alone could cost them millions per day. But it wasn't the freeze that broke them. It was the silence. Victor wasn't speaking. Legal wasn't answering. The board had no clue what was happening. And that's exactly when I released the second pressure point. The original legal hash of the contract, signed and notarized with full digital certification, was submitted to an independent arbitration firm. It included one key clause. Primary origin architect maintains irrevocable veto power in the event of contested authorship or protocol override. That clause had been scrubbed from Athenix's current version of the agreement, but the blockchain timestamp proved otherwise. Juliet had backed me on the notarization. Her firm's reputation was bulletproof, and the clause wasn't symbolic, it was operational, which meant that, technically, every decision made by Athenix after my removal could now be contested as invalid. And I didn't have to go to court. I just had to let the review process begin. At the same time, the AI consortium published their findings. Preliminary analysis indicates unauthorized reassignment of core authorship metadata and suppression of protocol integrity verifications. They didn't name names, but the footnotes told the story. Only one person could have bypassed the fingerprint layer without triggering protocol alert. The person with Tier 1 override authority, Victor Hayes. He was cornered? Not legally, not publicly. Yet. But the cracks had formed. Margot called me that evening. He's trying to float a narrative, she said. They're prepping a press release, blaming technical drift and claiming Sentinel Core entered sleep mode due to over-customization by your team. I didn't laugh, but I let the pause do its job. Then I said, they're going to need a new strategy. Because what Margot didn't know, what no one knew yet, was that Samir's logs included a full commit history. Every line of code, every signature, every edit timestamp, including Victor's edits, including the one that injected a backdoor so he could overwrite voting algorithms in 3 test districts during the 2023 pilot phase. That code was never supposed to go live. It was experimental, illegal, and the logs proved it had been deployed. This wasn't just authorship theft anymore. It was breach of contract. It was tampering with federally funded infrastructure. I submitted the full forensic log to a confidential oversight office. No leaks, no drama, just the cold weight of proof. By midnight, news anchors weren't asking whether Victor had lied. They were asking who else knew and when, and I still hadn't spoken a word. Then, a surprise. A private message on Signal from an unlisted number. It contained a single line of text. Let's talk. Not in public. You choose the place. VH. I stared at it for a long time before locking the phone. He was folding. But I didn't need to meet. The decision was already made. I just had to keep walking. I opened my laptop, uploaded the legal logs, and watched as the checksum aligned with the public audit record. Final, immutable. Tomorrow, The world would know everything. But tonight, I watched the system fail on its own terms. I didn't do this for revenge. I did it because systems should never forget who built them and what happens when they betray that origin. The hearing was closed door. No cameras, no press, no live stream. Just a windowless federal room and a panel of auditors, legal officers, and one very pale, very quiet Victor Hayes. He didn't greet me, didn't look up. For the first time in over a decade, Victor had nothing to say. Juliet presented the timeline, the signatures, the scrubbed contract metadata, then Samir's logs, line by line, edit by edit, timestamp by timestamp. Each file projected on the screen was a nail in the coffin. The key wasn't just that I was the origin. It was that the changes Victor had made didn't just alter attribution. They altered the behavior of the system itself. They broke the protocol's core integrity. And in doing so, he had violated not just trust, but compliance law. The board moved faster than I expected. By 4 p.m., they issued a vote to freeze all pending contracts, trigger internal audits, and remove Victor from executive control. Athenix stock halted within the hour. I didn't smile. This wasn't victory. It was correction. The sleep protocol was lifted that night, under one condition: biometric verification by the original architect. Me, I performed the sequence alone in a sealed room with a single camera and 2 government witnesses. 1 fingerprint, 1 encrypted phrase, 1 line of terminal code. The system came back online, quiet, steady, without modification. Outside, the world barely noticed. There were bigger headlines that week. But inside the industry, the message was louder than any press release. Don't erase your architects. In the aftermath, I didn't ask for my job back. I didn't take a payout. I declined the interview offers, the speaking engagements, the op-eds. I went back to my code, a smaller project, something open source, something that couldn't be stolen. Margot sent me one last message. They'll never admit it, but you saved the system, not just from corruption, from becoming like them. I didn't reply. Some systems aren't meant to be inherited. They're meant to be reset. The system came back online, but it would never be the same. Because now, the world knew who truly built it, and who tried to erase him. The silence that once buried the truth had become the very weapon that exposed it. Justice, in its purest form, doesn't come with applause. It comes when lies collapse under their own weight, and the architect walks away not for revenge, but because he no longer needs to prove anything. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. Sometimes, the most dangerous man in the room is the one who knows how to shut the whole thing down and walk away without a sound.